sports and TV show streams, going live on YouTube, streaming live on YouTube. I gotta go up front and check to see if this is going live. Because last time I turned my iPad off because it went to upcoming events. Sports and TV show screens. See if I see it live. Okay, see, now it says live, Lightning Husband. Okay. Gotta change the front camera so I can see the TV. Nope, this is not gonna work.
If I can understand this. I had a date with this lady, something happened to her car, we've rescheduled it, now she's late again. Well, it's the A toddler is trapped in a narrow hole.
All that you could see was his little hands.
Now, battling time and terrain.
If the hull had caved in, there would have been no way to rescue Christopher.
Rescuers dig furiously to free the helpless child.
We're coming down here for you, okay?
Then, a frantic chase leads police into a deadly quagmire.
I've got 2 county officers out there in the swamp.
On Rescue 911.
We begin in rural New Jersey. Actors portray the Chambers family in this reenactment, but some of the footage you will see was taped as night fell on April 24th, 1986, and a last chance rescue attempt was made. Less than an hour outside of New York City lies the farming community of Colts Neck, New Jersey. On the first nice day of spring, Tom Chambers was home watching his 2 children on his day off.
I was home alone with the kids. I had Christopher and Tara playing in a sandbox. Come around 6:30, my wife arrived home.
As I was getting out of the car, I heard the phone ringing, so I asked my husband to answer the phone.
I walked in through the screen door, answered the telephone, was on the phone for a minute or less, and I saw Christopher get up out of the sandbox and start to toddle down the driveway.
2-year-old Christopher was only out of his parents' sight for a few minutes.
At that point, there was no major alarm because we're at least a half mile from the highway. We have a nice front yard.
Cheryl, Chris is going down the road.
We both went out the front door at the same time, looked at the yard, and Chris was nowhere. I thought I heard him crying, but it was a very muffled cry. And at that point, I knew that he might be in trouble because he was crying.
I heard a lot of hysterical screaming and yelling, and I came running out from behind the house, and there I saw my wife flailing her arms, screaming that Christopher had fallen into a hole.
The boy had fallen 12 feet underground into a hole only 12 inches wide.
All that you could see was his little hands right at the top of his head. There was no way to reach him.
I immediately ran for the house as I picked up the phone. At that point, I was in such a panic that I had a great deal of difficulty dialing the telephone.
The 400-acre farm the Chambers leased house was on was being subdivided. The unmarked hole had been drilled by a company taking soil samples in preparation for the housing development. Most of the other holes had already been filled in. Police Sergeant Tom Hartman took charge at the scene.
When I first looked into the hole, my first thought was, we're in serious trouble here. We're in serious trouble. I've been in first aid for over 25 years now, and I've been in a lot of accidents, and I've extricated people from cars, but never anything like this.
You couldn't reach him. You couldn't touch him. You couldn't let him know that it was okay.
We figured we would get the rope and see if we could nuke the boy's hands. But being so young, his hands were so soft, the rope would just slip off. There was nothing to really get a hold of. It was just frustrating that there's the boy within our sight and we couldn't get him.
I'll never forget the feeling that I had when I first got there. That's, I'll just never forget that sight.
Volunteer Fire Captain Ernie Holland was the next to arrive.
The greatest fear I think everyone had was a cave-in. If the hull had caved in, there would have been no way to rescue Christopher.
When we continued,
There was so much dirt on top of his head. And I got so scared. Because I'm thinking that, pretty soon he's going to be covered.
Newsletter featuring star interviews, fun facts, and schedule highlights. Sign up today at get.tv.
I know it might sound a little cold or whatever, but I didn't stand there with my arms around my wife I wanted my son out of the hole, so whatever I had to do to get him out of the ground, I was prepared to do. I had a great concern about getting him oxygen. I had a tree trimmer in my garage, which was on an aluminum extension pole, and I rigged up a tubing device, and then the police officers lowered it into the hole, and then put it right over the top of his head.
Chris, get out, Is it okay? Yeah. Even if we have to stay for a while, we're still all right.
One of the problems that immediately began was everybody wanted to look into the hole, so everybody that walked up to the hole would kick a little bit of dirt into the hole.
There was so much dirt on top of his head, and I got so scared because I'm thinking that, pretty soon he's going to be covered.
The area immediately around the hole was cleared. Tom Hartman and Ernie Hallam stayed to supply oxygen and encouragement to the boy.
We tried almost anything, and then finally we determined that the best way to rescue him would be to dig a hole that was parallel to the shaft that Christopher was trapped in.
We were going to have to dig, as far as we knew, all the way down.
It was just too big a hole to dig by hand. We really need some sort of digging machine like a backhoe, so at that point I ran back in the house and started to call anybody in the area who may have a backhoe that we could get over to the house and start to dig.
15-year-old Adam Dean had been at home, his father's backhoe sitting in the yard next door. Though Adam didn't have a license, he drove the huge digging machine a mile to the Chambers house.
And a guy came over from the gas station and told me that there was a kid trapped in a well and that he needed the backhoe to get him out. I felt bad for the kid, so I drove it over there myself.
The backhoe digging would have to be precise. One misstroke could bury the boy, but they had no experienced operators at the scene.
It's a very frustrating feeling to stand there and be able to do absolutely nothing. You can't move the earth.
Call sec 707.
Everybody who had a radio or telephone at that point put out emergency calls to get a backhoe operator to start to dig.
By chance, heavy equipment operator Warren Brickman heard the call for help on his police scanner.
When I got there, I said to the sergeant, let's get going here. He put the machine into place, and we started digging.
The basic plan was to make the hole deeper than where he was, and then tunnel upward to him.
At that point, the fear was that the vibration of the backhoe could knock a chunk of dirt loose, and if that were to occur, he'd be buried alive.
Don't be afraid of the noise, Chris. We're coming down here for you, okay?
The worst thing about the whole rescue was my feeling of helplessness. I knew that he wanted his Baba, so I ran in and got him a bottle of milk, and I knew that would make him feel better.
Hold on, Chris.
He was crying, whimpering. It was very cold in the hole. It was very damp, and we were very concerned at that point.
When the hole was 15 feet deep, they shut down the backhoe. Firemen Jack White and Darren Elliott would have to do the rest of the delicate digging by hand.
A ladder was put down into the hole once that the backhoe had completed its operation. We now had to start tunneling across, approximately 3 to 4 feet. We had almost one incident where one side of the wall almost caved in on us.
I went into my garage and I was pulling panels of plywood off the walls, brought that back, and we shored it with plywood. So the whole time I was basically busy taking care of all these little odd jobs that needed to be taken care of. I wanted my son out of the hole.
More than 2 hours had passed. Night had fallen, and the temperature was dropping. Rescue workers struggled to keep Christopher awake to help protect him from hypothermia.
I know it was very cold on top of the hole, so down 15 feet it must have been significantly colder.
It came a point, it had to be about 2.5, 3 hours into the operation, that he did go quiet on us. You could just see the tops of his hands. That's all we could see, because now his head was all full of dirt. You couldn't even see his blonde hair.
I just kept thinking to myself, dig, dig, dig to get this little boy out. He wants to go home. It was just so hard. The dirt was so hard. The water was rising the bottom of the well. And every dig or shovel we made, we just didn't know how much further we had to go. It was like you just wanted to please break through a hole.
The police officers were trying to keep him active and keep him crying, whatever they could keep him doing. Towards the end, he was totally silent. I saw them getting nervous about that and call over to the fellas doing the digging, that they had better hurry it up because we all felt as though time was running out.
The digging came down to inches.
If he's down 12 feet, and now he's going across 3 to 5, if he's off a little ways, we could miss the boy entirely.
Somebody measure with their hands resistance with the gentleman. Approximate 3 feet.
They reached a point where they couldn't use full-size shovels anymore, so we ended up searching for toy shovels, or we had an ice cream scooper. None of them really worked well. I finally went in the garage and I found a little spade shovel, and that was finally the shovel that he used to finally got through.
I told Jack to tell them up above that I was going to go ahead and take a shot at pulling him.
It's just a miracle it didn't cave in, because it was all sand, but I wasn't even worried about it. I'd do it again. I would go back in the hole and do it again. We couldn't have planned it any better if we had surveyed it. And I'll never forget staring down the hole, just watching them disappear. I just wanted to really meet these guys who had done all the digging down below, and to meet them at the end and shake hands and just really hug each other. It was an amazing feeling.
I was so elated. I was so happy. And I remember telling him that I loved him about 100 times when he was in the hospital. Christopher, I love you. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Mommy, so happy.
When you almost lose a child like that, you don't know how important or how much love you have for your children. There was a group effort that took place. I'd have to say thank you to everyone.
Christopher is 5 years old now. Though he remembers little about that night, the people who saved him have not forgotten.
The final tool that they had given me was a spade and shovel. When the incident was over, the father had told someone to go down in the hole and get the shovel. When he had come out, he had given it to me as a remembrance. And I have it at home today. And someday I hope to give it back to Chris and tell him, well, here's what did it to you, son. You know, this is the last tool that your father gave me to get you out.
Next.
Every time we tried to move, we just kept on sinking deeper and deeper. And he couldn't help me, and I couldn't help him.
Baltimore, Maryland, on the back streets near the edge of the city. Actors and stunt people have helped us reconstruct the events that took place late on a moonlit fall night.
241.
241, go ahead. 74, Red Toyota Corolla.
Eastbound on Megan towards Smallwood, heading towards Hawkins Point Road.
Driver in speed, refuse pulling.
It was the last flight of the evening, about 1 o'clock in the morning, October 14th.
As usual, police helicopter pilot Kevin Peters and his partner aerial observer Al Earhart were on patrol.
We were just completing a route check for possible burglary. I began scanning the channels as I normally do, and I had to switch to the southeast channel when I heard 2 Adam 41.
2 out of 41, which location? Eastbound, be advised. 80
TJ Foxtrot. Foxtrot, we are back. We're heading in the area now. Where's the guy met now? Okay, Adam 41 to Fox. The guy just took off. Fox, eastbound on Eastern Avenue, high rate of speed, just crossed into the county. Okay, we're going to try to head him off for you. 10-4. Okay, coming up. 2 Adam 41, 10-4, still eastbound.
As the car and its unknown occupants speeded out of the city, the chopper picked up the chase.
He's making a left hand Virginia Avenue, heading eastbound on Virginia. Looks like it might be on a dead-end street here, Fox. We're coming up on the area now. I got a bail at 600 block Virginia Avenue. Wooded area, looks like it might be a swamp down there. Not that point, got a swamp here. We're going to search this side. 2 out of 41, Ryder, Fox. We were illuminating the entire area, just looking for any possible suspects.
There's a little bit of sheen from the water, ambient lights from nearby houses, but not enough to even see what's going on down there.
The only thing that we had was 2 subjects running through the swamp, attempting to make their escape. Whether or not they were armed or not, we had no way of knowing. So you're really dealing with the unknown.
Baltimore City cops pursue the suspects on foot through a wooded area. At the same time, on the far side of the swamp, County Officer Ed Lacey and trainee Harry Ricketts tried to cut off the suspect's escape route.
We started running towards the swamp. It was all hard ground. And then it started getting a little bit slick. Started getting real soft, and at that point it's too late, and we were both stuck.
Ricketts and Lacey had run into a quagmire. The wet, boggy ground sucked them in almost immediately.
Every time we tried to move, to turn back, we just kept on sinking deeper and deeper. So each time you move your foot, put weight on one foot to get the other free, you just sink in.
With the suspect still at large, the helicopter crew continued searching, unaware that 2 county officers were in desperate trouble.
Kevin, swing around here real tight. I think I saw them. Okay. Okay, there they are. I happened to see the 2 suspects as they emerged from the wood line. Hold it right there. Don't move. Hold it right there. Right at that time, we got an urgent call from 2 Adam 40. 2 Adam 40, Fox. Foxtrot. I've got 2 county officers out there in the swamp. Look like they're stuck or they can't move. If you turn around and check on them. We couldn't leave the suspects there, not knowing whether or not they were armed. So it was kind of touch and go at that point. 2 Adam, come on, we got them pinned down here in the swamp. Can you see our searchlights? 41, 10-4, Fox. You immediately responded back to the east bank of the swamp where the officers were stuck.
When the helicopter arrived, other cops on the ground were trying to reach the 2 officers. Lacey was in very deep, sinking much faster than Ricketts.
I was up just above the city officer was down there, and he handed a light stick out for me to grab.
Ricketts had made it to more solid ground, but Officer Lacey was sinking.
I felt there was a possibility he might go under. I really wanted to help this man. Standing there watching somebody in trouble was kind of hard on a person. So after weighing all this, I said to my partner, Al, I think we can pull him out with the skid. And he looked at me and said, if you think you can do it, go ahead.
You're going to have to guide me because I won't be able to see him. I got you.
Pilot Kevin Peters had to try to lower the skid down into Lacey's hands, blindly trusting his partner's directions.
Okay, all right. Okay, keep coming to the right. Okay, a little farther to the right. A little bit forward, a little bit forward. As we were hovering, I leaned out the door and indicated the location that I wanted that officer to grab. A little bit more. A little bit more. Okay, he's got a hold. Okay, lift slowly, lift slowly. Okay, here we go. Coming up. Okay. Well, what's happening? Is he okay out there? Yeah, he's okay.
When it picked up, the aircraft tilted slightly, just a little bit to the right. The unbalance in the weight distribution of the aircraft was causing that.
That was a critical time. You could have an engine failure, lose partial power. That possibility is always there.
How high have I got him? Well, just cleared the ground.
The helicopter picked him up completely out of the swamp and carried him about 5 yards to the hard ground.
Can you hover in towards the bank? Okay, I'm going to slide left. Make sure I'm clear. Okay, and we just back got him. I'm going to cut him now. Okay, you let go. He's off.
The best moment was when it was all over. Everybody was safe. This is a thing that we've never trained to do, nor has ever been done in the 19 years of our unit's existence.
It's just a good feeling that you had when you help somebody. We were fortunate. We were able to pull it off successfully.
And said, here I am.
Now, won't you please join me as we ask God...
I've learned that it's not a cliche that dogs are man's best friend. Lady is certainly ours.
Lady's like a hero because she saved my life. And I think Lady's the best dog in the whole wide world.
I really don't know what would have happened if Lady hadn't come in. She needed to be there to take care of us. And today she's just a lady again. She's great. She's still lazy. And she still just sleeps most of the time, but that's the story.
Today on Rescue 911, home hazard. An unsuspecting couple succumbs to carbon monoxide.
I think a kid might be inside.
Be there as firefighters drag them from the deadly house. Then a flooded cave traps a young man. Now rescuers fight rock and rapids to reach him. On Rescue 911.
At 22, Bill Kruger took his job seriously. He knew all the rules, and he followed them. But on November 6, 1988, in Skokie, Illinois, it would not be enough to just follow procedure.
That Sunday morning was cold and wet. Bob and Magda Brown were at home, catching up on household chores.
My wife and I were down in the basement working. I say, hey, something's wrong. It's cold here. So right away I know that the furnace is not working. We find the pilot light is off, and then Magda has to start lighting it.
It's not working.
She had to light several matches in order to finally get it going. We continued working until she left me to go upstairs to prepare lunch. All of a sudden I realized that she says, oh my God, I don't feel well. Something's wrong. She says, my heart is beating so fast, my heart is beating so fast. I said, let me check your pulse. And I started checking it. And I thought, what the heck is this? And it was beating more than twice as fast as mine. She says to me, don't you smell the gas? Don't you smell the gas? I says, Magda, there's no gas smell.
Not knowing what was wrong, Bob began calling anyone he could think of for help. But their family doctor was not in. And their daughter, Rochelle, was not home.
There's one call I gotta make. Magda says there's gas. I call up the gas company. I said, my wife is violently sick. She's got a headache. She's thrown up. She smells gas. Therefore, I'd appreciate somebody coming out.
When we continued,
The serviceman was convinced that there was a good chance somebody was in the house. They were afraid that if he was right, they would be dead.
Listen. Fools in Session with the Steve Harvey Show, weekdays at 7 on Get TV.
Bob's call to the gas company was relayed by dispatcher Steve Jones to 22-year-old field serviceman Bill Kruger.
.2018 quick call.
It took only a few minutes for Bill to get to the Browns' home. Following gas company procedure, he went to the back door of the house first.
To me, it was just, at that point, just another call that I was going on. I figured on my way back, I would go to the front door, maybe they didn't hear me. There was a car in the driveway, and there was a car out in front of the house.
When there was no answer at the front door either, Bill reported back to the
Yeah,
office.
10-4, Steve. I don't get any answer over here at this residence on Main Street. Can you give him a call?
10-4, I'll make the phone call. Even though we instruct the customers to stay, they don't always stay.
There was no answer. The Browns seemed to have gone out. But Bill was not convinced. So he went next door to talk to their neighbor, Wilson Acuna.
I saw somebody walking around the house. I think something gotta be wrong. What is this guy doing here?
Hi, from the gas company?
He wanted to know if I seen the neighbors. I say, no, I haven't seen them.
I just had a gut feeling there was something weird here. TV was on, lights on, cars in the driveway. To me, that would sound like somebody's home. And I then proceeded to check around the door frame for carbon monoxide, right around the lock, where you can get some draft through. And I got 200 parts per million. It was real high for me to get a reading outside the door like that, so I knew it had to be really bad inside.
But even in an emergency, gas company employees can't break into private homes.
Hi, can I borrow your phone? I got a problem. You can feel your heart pumping, and you just think of the steps that you were taught of what to do in an emergency situation. I think the people might be inside. I'm gonna need the paramedics and the police over here as soon as you can.
Skokie 911.
Dispatcher Mark Klinghoffer took the call for help at 3:35 p.m.
They gave me the address.
Attention, rescue truck 17.
As I was dispatching the call to the ambulance, I realized that I knew the people that lived in the house. I've known the Browns for close to 20 years. It was the first time I ever realized that I'd be dispatching calls to friends and people that I knew and loved.
I thought that it might be just, the people had called, gas company, took a long time getting there, they went on somewhere.
I think we got some people inside here.
But the serviceman was convinced that there was a good chance somebody was in the house. He found carbon monoxide, 200 parts per million. You know, I was hoping he was wrong, because I was afraid that if he was right, they would be dead. We noticed that there was no smell of natural gas, so most likely, if there was a problem, it was carbon monoxide.
Somebody in the kitchen. Somebody open some window. There's one in here.
And he was unconscious and apparently not breathing. I checked for pulse, and he did have a pulse.
Oh, there ain't another victim. We got another one in there.
Look in there. Let's go to the fire department. Relax, relax. We're trying to get you out of here. Don't come like gases.
Just had a lot of red color in him, like he was on fire or something. It's a scary moment.
But the female patient was apparently experiencing impaired judgment at the time, which is not unusual for carbon monoxide poisoning.
When Bill checked the furnace, he found it was burning fuel improperly, giving off deadly carbon monoxide gas. He shut it down until it could be repaired.
He's starting to assist a little on ventilation. Let's get him over onto the board.
Okay, Doc.
The paramedics went to work on Bob immediately.
Get his arms down.
When they were taking her out the front door, the female patient passed out. Her condition was critical.
The male patient was breathing, but he was breathing shallow, not very deep respiration. So our initial treatment was to make sure that he was getting enough oxygen and to kind of control his breathing for him. He wouldn't have lasted much more than maybe 10 minutes in that condition.
Mrs. Brown, I'm going to put some oxygen out, and this is going to help you.
You're always explaining what you're doing to a patient in the hopes that at some time they'll respond to you.
Start an IV on you.
On the way to the hospital, Bob regained consciousness.
The paramedic started talking to me. And he said, Mr. Brown, you and your wife just had an accident. You had carbon monoxide poisoning. I look around and I says, where's my wife? My wife? Well, how's she? I became frightened for her.
Bob and Magda Brown were taken to Lutheran General Hospital for treatment.
At the hospital, they were pushing us out on the gurneys, and we were just about alongside each other when we touched hands on the gurney going in. And I felt better.
The Browns were put in a pressurized room to force the carbon monoxide out of their red blood cells. Their daughter Rochelle could only watch and wait.
One of the paramedics grabbed me over to the side and said, I don't know if you realize this, but we're talking another 2 or 3 minutes, and both of your parents would have been dead. It was like hearing that. It's just a tremendous kick. And all I could think was, I looked at both of them and they went, oh, okay, they're here now. And it just struck me how remarkably lucky I was.
I have tremendous faith, and I feel that God has some calling for me because He saved me in Auschwitz and He saved me this time. So maybe I have a few more years to go and spread some joy in this world.
Nearly a year later, Magda and Bob got a chance to meet Bill Kruger for the first time.
Oh my goodness!
Meeting Bill for the first time was gratifying to me. It was a shock because I'd never seen him. I've seen a picture of him in the newspaper, and I've talked to him on the phone several times.
Thank you over and over and over again.
And it was nice to be able to say to him, thank you for saving my life. What else can you say?
I just did something that maybe other people would have done too in that same instance. I just did my job.
Next.
We're in trouble, serious trouble. That's when Roland, he was trying to situate himself on his side of the cave, and he lost his balance.
We begin in rural Indiana on July 1st, 1985. Michael Hall and his friend Roman Lazowski entered the Spring Mill State Park caves. Dressed in swim trunks and t-shirts, armed only with flashlights, they were completely unprepared for what they would find.
I've known Roman since high school. We were very close. You know, we just done everything together. Well, some people like to hunt and fish, and you know, I like to come caving every year. So that's what we did. That's why I felt kind of responsible, because I'm the one that got it together. If I wouldn't have asked him, he wouldn't have been with me.
Mike and his friend Roman had paid no attention to the warning posted outside the caves, so they had no idea that heavy rains miles away would cause the cave's underground stream to flood.
We really couldn't notice it at first. I mean, it was rough, but it wasn't high. Pretty intense there, Roman. And it was, you know, like, all right, it's a little higher, you know, it's going to be a little funner. So we just kept going forward, and it started getting really wild. I started thinking, hey, maybe we might have to go back. But once we got past that part, I knew we couldn't go back, because you couldn't swim across that kind of water. We're in trouble, serious trouble. That's when Roman, he was trying to situate himself on his side of the cave, and he lost his balance. At that point, I sat there at least a couple hours. I didn't know what to do. It was probably one of the hardest things I ever done, is just to let go. That I didn't think that I was going to make it, that's when I came popping up outside the cave.
At 1:15 p.m., park manager Bill Carlisle got the first call for help.
Spring working, Spring.
Go ahead.
I have a report from the surface building, injured septic, Donaldson Cave parking lot.
He was shaking and his teeth was chattering, and barely could you understand what he's trying to tell you. I know he was deeply concerned for his friend, because he kept saying, my friend's in there.
Believing Roman was trapped in the caves, Carlisle called in the local chapter of the National Cave Rescue Commission, led by Don Piquette.
When I arrived at the parking lot, a ranger started telling me this incredible story about how someone had blown out of the Donaldson Cave entrance in the flood with his body trashed, a broken arm, and spill out this story about how his friend was still in the cave.
If Roman was still alive, he could be almost anywhere in thousands of feet of flooded caves.
I drew the short straw, got to be the person to go down into the crevice and see what was going on. And what I saw at the pipes where the ceiling drops was almost like a geyser. We could not send divers into anything like that. They would have been pushing a 40-knot current, zero visibility.
There was no way in. Rescue workers were forced to give up that night and wait for the water level to drop. But the next morning, the water was still extremely high. Roman might fall in the dark and drown or die of exposure before they could get past the geyser. They decided to risk going in the front of the caves.
We really thought that once we got past the entrance rapids and into the cave, it would be negotiable. Instead, the passage narrowed, the current picked up and pulled us back against the ledge with the raft, and we were pinned against the wall. At this point, we felt very stupid and also very trapped.
We've had no contact for 30 minutes. They were supposed to call us every 15 minutes. We've heard nothing. Over.
After 3 hours of struggling, the rescuers managed to pull themselves out of the caves to safety. But they had made no contact with Roman.
Not knowing if the person was even in the cave, and if he was in the cave, if he was alive, it was not worth risking human lives to try, said the cave divers.
Roman's friends and family had gathered outside the caves, waiting for any word of his fate.
After I find out he was missing, I just was out of my mind, you know. I walked down the river and kind of talked to myself, talking to him and stuff.
Roman's mother was joined by his sister Chris.
We were just scared to death. I just felt like crying all the time and just helpless, very helpless.
Roman had been missing for more than 24 hours when the regional director of the Cave Rescue Commission, Dr. Noel Sloan, arrived.
For the next 12 hours, so I'm afraid he's going to die from hypothermia.
The floodwaters were still blocking both ends of the caves, so volunteer firemen dug all night by hand, trying to get in through an old cave shaft. Time was running out. Early the next morning, heavy drilling equipment was brought in to tunnel down from the top through 75 feet of rock. K-9 teams searched to see if Roman had been washed out of the cave like Mike, but had been too badly hurt to call for help. Then after 47 hours of silence, they heard a faint voice inside the cave. Roman was still alive. The water was so loud, communication was impossible, but the level had finally dropped enough that they could try to snake in a care package past the geyser to Roman.
I see this light, you know, it's like first thing I've seen in 2 days. And I'm like, hey, help, you know, it's me, I'm alive.
Roman had managed to climb up out of the 60-mile-an-hour floodwaters onto a 4-inch ledge, and he had remained there trapped in the dark without food, water, or any sign of hope until the care package.
Next thing I know, I see some guy pop up onto the other side.
One of the rescue workers had forced his way past the geyser.
It's very common in rescue situations for the victim to do very well right up until the rescuers reach him and then give up or let go or make a move towards the rescuers. It's unsafe and end up dying.
There wasn't much you could say because, you know, you weren't sure if you could really hear what you were saying because he was all bundled up. You just wanted to touch him to make sure he was alive.
I look and I see my mom. I saw a bunch of my friends that had been alive.
Roman was badly cut up and dehydrated, but after 58 hours, he was finally out of the cave.
There just haven't been enough cave rescues to make people qualified experts. And so anytime you come out of a cave rescue with a live person, it was a good rescue.
There wasn't much you could say because, you know, you weren't sure if you could really hear what you were saying because he was all bundled up. You just wanted to touch him to make sure he was alive.
I look and I see my mom. I saw a bunch of my friends that had been alive.
Roman was badly cut up and dehydrated, but after 58 hours, he was finally out of the cave.
There just haven't been enough cave rescues to make people qualified experts. And so anytime you come out of a cave rescue with a live person, it was a good rescue.
Today on Rescue 911, Wash Day Danger. A baby girl tumbles into a washing machine. Be there as a heroic neighbor performs CPR.
I didn't know if I could do it right.
Until help arrives. Then, a thief attempts to elude capture.
He's running eastbound on 4th.
Watch as cops use the latest high-tech tools.
The infrared system is our night eyes.
To track him down on Rescue 911.
Like most families, the beginning of every day had become a predictable routine for the Rollisons of Port St. Lucie, Florida. But on February 21st, 1987, their orderly routine was shattered. It was early Tuesday morning. Gail Rollison was beginning to get ready for work.
The three older kids were in the living room watching TV, and Denise was in the adjoining family room playing with the toys. I started the wash and waited until the washer was filled with water. Every single morning at 8 o'clock, I took a shower, and the other kids went to the bus stop at 8:10. As soon as it was done filling up, I said, I'm going to take a shower now.
Watch the baby.
And no one was specifically in charge of watching the baby. It was just something that I did it every morning. It was like a routine thing.
Her husband had already left for work, but Gail was confident her three older children could look after 18-month-old Denise. Gail was in the shower for less than 10 minutes. When we continue.
My mom just freaked out, and I called 911. My brother ran to Carlin's. She just looked dead.
You call or visit help. Compare thousands of Medicare plans with all of these benefits and more, including plans that may let you keep your doctor and save money. Don't waste it. Health Markets doesn't just work for one insurance.
40. That's 800-299-9040. Call now.
All right now, Get TV fans, don't be left in the dark. Get on over to our online TV schedule so you'll always know what's on next. That's www.get.tv. Now don't let me down now.
saw Denise's chair by the washer, and it's never over there. It was like something come over me, and there was something telling me that something's wrong.
My mom just freaked out. I mean, she did not know what to do at all. And I called 911. My brother ran to Carlin's. She just looked dead.
Morton.
The call for help came in at 8:11 a.m.
Okay, how old is the baby?
I was home in bed, sleeping. The next thing I knew, Jeremy was just rapping on the windows and called me to come over to the house that something was wrong.
Carlin Korb rushed next door to help. From 3 miles away, paramedics also headed to the scene.
From the time a patient stops breathing and the heart stops, between 4 and 6 minutes, brain death begins. After 10 minutes of not having CPR done, there is essentially no chance of bringing them back.
I just knew I had to do it. I didn't know if I could do it right, if it would help, and I just started doing the CPR.
Carlin had not taken a first aid course in years.
So like at first I couldn't remember how to do it, and then I started doing it and pushing on her chest and breathing into her mouth, and then I remembered that you had to tilt the neck back. I didn't know if she was going to make it or not. Her skin was all bubbly, and it just looked like different colors, like blue and real deep pink, and her eyes had a very far away look. I remember talking to Gail and telling her to try to calm down, and she kept saying that it was her fault, and I kept saying no, it wasn't, you know, it was an accident.
Within 9 minutes of the call for help, paramedic Tim Munson and EMT Greg Sorensen got to the Rawlinsons' house.
When I first arrived on the scene, the mother was hysterical. When you see a child just laying there lifeless, it scares you.
She was cyanotic. Cyanosis is a discoloration of the skin, usually blue in color. It's brought on by lack of oxygen. Most of the time, when you see something with that much discoloration, that much cyanosis, chances of bringing it back are almost non-existent. The thing that kept her viable was the neighbor doing CPR. That's what spans the time. She was not only sending the blood around the body by doing the compressions, but she was also breathing for the baby.
I picked her up myself and did mouth-to-mouth out to the truck, because by that time we had had a pulse.
I felt helpless. Like there was nothing I could do. It was already too late.
Okay, bag.
We didn't know how long she had been under the water in the wash machine. We don't know if she had brain damage or not.
If you can hear me, squeeze my hand, Denise.
Her color started to change within just a few moments of when we started breathing her.
Man, I'm ready to get out of here.
It felt like someone died in my family. I don't know why. It just felt like someone died, and I just kept on crying and crying.
11-year-old Tracy blamed herself for the accident.
I felt guilty about what happened and everything. I was the oldest. I was the one that was supposed to be responsible of what is going on in the house when my mom's not around.
At the local hospital, Denise was examined by Dr. Hamid Gundabda.
She was unresponsive, like in coma. She was not breathing on her own. I was almost sure that either she was not going to make it or she was going to be mentally retarded if she did make it.
Dr. Gundabda decided to airlift Denise to Shands Hospital's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit 200 miles away in Gainesville. There she was treated by the director of the unit, pediatrician Sal Goodwin.
Denise, when she first arrived at our hospital, she was in a deep coma. Unquestionably, the biggest problem in a near drowning patient is the degree of brain injury that has occurred as a result of lack of oxygen. In this situation, the odds are very much against a good survival.
Dr. Goodwin was forced to prepare Gail and her husband Dennis for the possibility that their baby daughter might never come out of the coma.
Well, she's a very, very sick little girl. There was a sudden point in the conversation where you could see that Denise's mother realized what was happening. That all of a sudden this healthy, happy 18-month-old who'd never had a problem in her life was on the verge of dying.
I didn't know what to say. I mean, Gail really, took it real hard. When you see someone like that, it was just, you're helpless.
I couldn't hold her. She wasn't awake, but I still had to be there. And I felt like she knew I was there.
For 2 days and 2 nights, Gail stayed by Denise's bedside.
I felt real guilty for what had happened to Denise, because I was the one here. I should have been the one responsible for it.
Next morning, got up, walked over to the hospital, and little Denise yelled out, "Daddy." Just like it was, fine. I mean, not that she was fine, but, she wasn't in a coma anymore.
So when she came out of it and she recognized every one of us, then I knew there was nothing wrong with her. She had a favorite blanket she called a Lala, and that's the first thing she wanted was her Lala. So I knew she was all right.
Denise was hospitalized for a month with a serious lung disease caused by the laundry detergent she had inhaled. 3 years later, she is completely recovered.
I think the neighbor, if she would have been there, we would have had nothing to work with. Absolutely nothing. Without the neighbor, the child would probably be dead now.
It makes me feel good, that she is alive because of what I did. Learn CPR. That's the only lesson I can say. Anybody that lives near water or pools or has children should know it.
Prevention is the name of the game in near drowning. Keeping an eye on children and putting fences around the pools with self-closing, latching gates to know basic CPR.
It was very scary. I almost drowned.
It was a miracle. I don't know how to explain the feeling I had. It was just like the greatest feeling you could imagine. They say miracles don't really happen, but miracles do happen. I saw one.
I don't wash clothes anymore.
Next.
He's running eastbound on 4th. Okay, he's turning to the south, and he's by the rental place approaching 7th Street.
We love you.
Wow. That's right on, Caleb.
When you call or go to lushrinos.org right now, you'll be helping kids like us continue to get the amazing care only Shriners Hospitals for Children can provide. Please call or go online right now. If operators are busy, please call again or go to lushrinos.org. You think people will really give because of these commercials, Alec?
I think they will, buddy. I really think they will.
Please call or go online right away to give. Thank you.
When the weather turns colder, you want to be cozy, but all the same benefits as our best-selling for better sleep, wellness, and
You don't know what you're...
mattress pad. experience you've ever.
And we'll even throw in
For cops working at night, darkness can make it almost impossible to catch a fleeing suspect. Even from a helicopter, any tree or even a deep shadow can hide a man so thoroughly that pursuing police lose his trail. But in Fort Worth, Texas, the police have found a high-tech way to see in the dark.
It was sometime around 10 on the night of July 18th in a suburban neighborhood of Fort Worth. Using actors and officers involved, we have reconstructed the events of that night according to police and eyewitness accounts.
I was lying in my bed and I heard a noise. It sounded like a small motor, so I peeked out the blinds and saw a guy with a weed eater, and I wondered why somebody would be doing lawn work at 10:30 at night, and so I watched him to see what he was doing. At first I thought that he had locked himself out of the house. But then I decided that he didn't act like a person that had locked himself out of the house. He was acting too afraid. Whatever he was doing, he wasn't supposed to be in that house. And that's when I decided to call the police.
Emergency?
The eyewitness's call came in at 10:19 p.m.
Somebody said the person into the house next door.
What's the address of the house next door?
I'm not sure what it is.
Is it an apartment or a house?
It's a house. I wondered if there was anybody in the house. That was the main thing, is that if there was anybody in there, I was afraid for them, and I wanted the police to get here.
Okay, we'll get to our right answer. Thank you.
The police immediately dispatched Air 1.
Just crawled in through the back window of a darkened residence next door. The residence is actually on Monticello. The white residence, second from the corner to the north.
When the call went out, Flight Officer Larry Henderson and pilot Jay Dixon were only a couple of miles away.
About one. There's the house over there.
Air 1's flare system allows officers in the helicopter to see the heat of objects and people on the ground below, even when it's dark, and often even when they're hiding.
We get on a scene on a call like that, and we're using the FLIR, which is the infrared device. We did not see anybody in the backyard or on the grounds proper, but out front there was a truck and a person standing next to the truck.
Air 1 John 13, we have a subject out in front of the house standing at a vehicle, something in the back, appears to be a lawnmower.
The first officer on the ground arrived within 10 minutes.
There was a black female by a parked car in front of the residence. It was just unknown at that time exactly who she was. She just was talking loud enough so that whoever was inside the house could hear as well.
Over here, come over here. What are you doing over here?
Officer Gary Gendron and his partner were next on the scene.
Anybody with you?
She was excited, like she had been startled, looking up towards the helicopter and towards the back of the house, as though she was expecting someone to come from the rear of the house. The helicopter had already started its flare system and had taken up a position in the back of the house where they had been told the suspect had gained entry.
Looking down into the house, you can pick up a heat differential, and that if there's an open window, the warm from the inside of the house will show up as that window being a warm spot.
Air 1 John 13, just for your information, it appears we have an open window at the back of the house. Shows up on the infrared as a heat differential. 10-4, John 13 AB, you're going to take that?
I jumped the backyard fence and made my way toward the window area. Officer Dotson made his way around the back to my location.
John 210 to John 213. Everybody was kind of on alert at that point. The window was broken around the back. It had been broken with a weed eater, which was still laying about 3 feet from the open window.
into my car as a safety measure to keep her from running off while I'm trying to secure the front of the house.
We went ahead and made a decision to go ahead and enter the residence and have Officer John Drum cover the front while we did make entry.
The first thing we noticed when we came in the back bedroom was that the house was completely ransacked. I'm not sure what he was looking for, but every room was just completely ransacked and in shambles. We weren't sure if the suspect was still inside the residence. It's kind of like hide and seek, but for real.
Nobody in the kitchen area. House is clear.
A car drove up and asked me if I was looking for a black male with a white muscle shirt on, because there was one running down the street.
This is my record about 2 blocks down on West 5th Street.
When I told the helicopter that a suspect was heading down the street, they started scanning the street with their infrared system. The helicopter picked him up as he was nearing a patrol car that was coming up the street.
10-4, jump to 13, you 10-4.
He's running eastbound on 4th.
He's running eastbound on 4th.
Okay, he's turning to the south, and he's going to be on whether the side of the street is run by 7-Eleven.
My partner and Officer Dotson were in the house, so it left me. So I went ahead and took a route with the female in my car. Air 1 called the pursuit. I monitored the streets that Air 1 called.
Still southbound, he's by the rental place approaching 7th Street.
Option 7, 10-4, jump to 10, you clear.
K9 chasing now, he's out by the post office and JJ's Hideaway.
I was heading eastbound on West 7th Street, where the helicopter last said he was heading back towards West 7th Street. I saw the beam of light coming towards me, so I knew the suspect was running towards me.
Heading westbound. Cutting back to the north, be coming out on 7th Street. Westbound on 7th Street, approaching Monticello Market.
I saw him when he came around the corner of the building, and once he saw my patrol car, he darted across the street.
Officers have him, they're taking him down now.
The suspect we were chasing was in good physical condition and could have outran just about any of us that were there at the scene. So I believe he would have gotten away without the infrared system.
At nighttime before, I figured the helicopter at night was probably a marginal assistance. With the FLIR, it is a major factor in police work. It is a very good tool, and I cannot imagine doing the job without it.
Using the FLIR in pursuits has worked out real good for us. We can go out, and find these people and deal with them a little misery.
The suspect is awaiting trial for burglary. The woman was not charged.
My advice to these women in the situation I was in, like where you have a man beating you, you should tell somebody what's going on in your home. Never keep it a secret what's going on in your home. Go to your mother, go to your grandmother, go to your pastor. Don't let that fear stop you. Because that one time that you pick up that phone can save your life. You can escape it. I have, and you can.
emergency.
Today on Rescue 911, a striking discovery. A woman rushes out into the rain and finds her husband struck down by lightning.
He's lying in my front yard.
Okay, is he conscious? Rescuers must revive him over the phone.
If I don't tell her what to do, he's gonna die, no question about it.
Then, a young man slips into a coma after a biking accident.
I just want to take him and shake him and make him wake up and make him know that we're there.
Doctors fight to bring him back on Rescue 911.
During their 7-year marriage, John and Lynn Endicott of Lakeside, California, had rarely been able to take a vacation. On September 5th, 1991, when they returned from their first vacation in 3 years, they had no idea how much their life together was about to change.
Honey, you hear the dogs barking? I'm gonna take them for a walk.
Okay, hurry up, because dinner's ready.
We just returned from a camping trip. We really hadn't had a vacation or some time off together. It just put our relationship right back where it was when we first met. It was a very wonderful feeling for the two of us.
See you in a second, honey.
Come on. I was absolutely terrified because I knew that lightning was close and I knew he was out there. There was no response from him at all. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
When we continue,
I tried to drag him to the garage, but he was too heavy. But somehow I just couldn't give up. He wouldn't give up on me, and I would never give up on him.
Cover today. Extra, extra. It's the Get TV newsletter featuring star interviews, fun facts, and schedule highlights. Sign up today at get.tv.
Fire and medical emergency. Okay, what's the address there?
the call for help came into Heartland Communications dispatcher Scott Cullum.
Okay, is he conscious?
No, he's not.
Is he breathing? Is he breathing?
No. Please, what do I do now?
Okay, they're on the way. They'll be right there, okay?
I could tell by the emotional level that it was something pretty serious right away.
Can you bring the phone out where he is? Do you have a...
Yes, I can. Help me, God, help me.
I kind of hesitated about starting to give CPR instructions because technically I haven't been told that I can do this.
Are you out there? Okay, are you near where...
Though Scott had just completed an emergency medical training course that day, legally, he was not yet allowed to give medical instructions.
They're on the way out there now, okay? They'll be there in a short period of time. Okay, is he breathing? Okay, is there any way you can get him to near where the phone is? Can you drag him near where the phone is? All right. Okay, they're already on the way, okay? I'm just staying on the line with you.
I knew that we had to get him near the phone, and it was totally up to her to do it.
I grabbed him and tried to drag him to the garage, but he was too heavy. The first thing I thought of was I was going to spend the rest of my life alone without him, and I couldn't do that. And I don't know, I just got the strength somewhere down inside of me and got a hold of him and dragged him to however many feet it was to the garage.
Okay, is he over? Is he by where you're at?
10 feet away.
Okay, I want you to shake his shoulders and yell at him. Make sure he's unconscious. Do it now.
The initial objective before you want to start doing CPR on anybody is make sure they are not conscious, they do not have a pulse, and they are not breathing, because you can hurt somebody if they don't need CPR. Okay. Okay, did he move or respond at all? Is he breathing?
No.
Okay, you're sure?
Positive.
Okay, the engine is going to be there in just a minute.
No. Yeah, I can't see it coming over the hill, but not here. Tell me now.
If you lose your job for doing the right thing, then you lose your job. You know, there's a moral imperative here. If I don't tell her what to do, he's going to die, no question about it. I want you to go kneel on the side of your husband next to his head. Okay, I want you to place the palm of your hand that's closest to his feet under his neck, and use your other hand to put back on his forehead and tilt his head back. Do it now.
As soon as I was on my way back to him, I knew what the answer was already. I knew there was nothing there.
He's still not breathing?
No.
Okay, listen to me. Calm down. We're going to get through this. I want you to pinch his nose shut with your fingers.
Got it.
Take a deep breath and cover his mouth with your mouth and make a tight seal. Okay? Blow into his mouth and watch to see if his chest rises. Do it now 2 times.
It rises. It's making a glubbing noise.
Okay. With your index and your middle fingers, touch the center of his neck by his Adam's apple. Slide your fingers toward the back of the neck into the groove and feel for his pulse. Do it now.
There is no pulse.
Okay, the paramedics are going to be there. I want you to... I was very nervous because there was no question that he was basically clinically dead. Okay, I want you to place your second hand on top of the first and rapidly compress the chest 2 inches with your hands. I want you to rapidly do this 15 times in 15 seconds.
4, 5,
15 times.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Okay, now take a deep breath and pinch his nose and blow into his mouth like you did before. Be sure to make a tight seal. Do it now.
He's just blurting it out.
Okay, is he breathing?
No.
Okay, I want you to keep doing that till paramedics get there.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, God, 8, 9,
You're doing fine.
10, 11, 13, 14, 15, die.
Okay, 2 breaths.
The more I did the compressions, the more frustrated I got because there was no response from John at all, nothing.
Don't die. Don't die.
Okay, stay calm. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're helping him. With a full arrest, you start CPR. You don't stop until somebody comes in and takes over. You have to make them understand that they are helping, doing what they're doing.
11, 12, 13. Tell them to come quicker.
They're on their way.
They're right here.
Within 12 minutes of the call, the Lakeside Fire Department arrived, including Scott Culkin, who was on his first call as a paramedic.
Move aside, please. Move aside. My initial concern was the fact that there was still lightning striking in the area. So my first concern was to get the patient quickly loaded into the ambulance. The patient was in a rhythm called asystole, which is also known as a flat line on the monitor. The patient was clinically dead.
I asked them at the time, were you able to start his heart on his own? And they said no. It didn't look very good. But somehow I just couldn't give up. He wouldn't give up on me, and I would never give up on him. Ever.
Let's go ahead with epinephrine, Mike. We gave the patient several rounds of medications, and we got no response. At that point, we felt that the patient probably would not survive. He remained in a flat line with no pulses and never was breathing on his own.
It had been more than 30 minutes since John's heart stopped beating.
We'll have a systole in the monitor. Okay, let's go to the bicar. Here you go. Approximately 2 minutes from arriving at the emergency department, our base hospital physician gave an order to give the patient sodium bicarbonate, which was a deviation from our protocol. Okay, Mike, bicarb's on board. We have a normal sinus rhythm on the monitor. Check pulses. Check pulses. Apparently the base hospital physician knew what lightning did to the heart, but I don't think that any of us felt that he would survive this event, even though he did have a pulse when we delivered him.
35-year-old John Endicott was taken to the University of California San Diego Medical Center and put under the care of Dr. David Hoyt.
John was in a deep coma. His CAT scan suggested that his injury was due to the fact that he had a cardiac arrest. His EEG also suggested that he was not likely to make any useful recovery.
A doctor finally came out. And they worked on him for over an hour. And the first thing he did was he gave me my husband's wedding ring. And then they started to tell me that things were not very good. Somehow I felt I was in, they were talking to someone else, but he was looking at me in the eyes saying, your husband's going to die. I would go in and talk to him or hold his hand. I always touched him. I was always talking to him, telling him what was going on, that I missed him and loved him. I used to sing to him, Johnny Angel, Johnny Angel. But I never gave up hope. They were talking about if he lived, he had a 1% chance of becoming a functioning human being. That's like somebody that can get out of bed and that's about it. Has no thought process at all.
After 2 weeks, amazingly, Lynn did see a change in her husband's condition.
Just walked right over to him and leaned right down to him and gave him a kiss right on his lips. And he kissed me back. So I did it a second time, just to be sure that I wasn't imagining things. And he kissed me back a second time. That's when I knew. There was someone in there and he knew who I was.
5 weeks after being struck by lightning, John was released from the hospital. But it took 20 months of speech, physical, and occupational therapy before he could return to work.
I'm happy to be alive. I want to thank everyone who saved my life. Without their help, I wouldn't be here today. I hope someday I can repay them.
He's got short-term memory problems right now. And sometimes his reactions are a little slower than they used to be. But physically, there's no scars or any other problems. He's just not quite as strong as he used to be, but through time, that will come back. It truly is a miracle that he is alive.
The most amazing thing to me about John's recovery is the fact that we were wrong. We had lost hope. His wife did not. She saw us through that extra week, and that made the difference. And I think there's no question that had she lost hope at that point, that there may have been a different outcome.
It's wonderful to have him back. We'd like to go on someday, maybe even have a family. We just are glad to be back together. Scott Cohen, the 911 operator, didn't do just what he had to do. He made a judgment on his own to give me that CPR information. And my husband is alive because he made that decision. I could never tell him thank you enough.
I've been a dispatcher for 9 years, and this last year is the first year that they've let us give these pre-arrival instructions.
A lot of people are under the impression that when they call 911, that the people on the other end are going to be able to tell them exactly what to do, CPR, mouth-to-mouth, whatever. But the sad fact is that most fire departments do not allow dispatchers to tell them what to do. There's nothing more helpless as a dispatcher when somebody calls up and they're saying, what do I do, what do I do? And you have to sit there and say, well, I can't tell you what to do because, the agency you work for is worried about getting sued by somebody. It's a call that I'll never forget. It was my first CPR, and John survived. And I really thank the Lord that he's around.
Next.
He was 30 feet in the air, thrown down, hit head first. So, first thing that goes through my mind is that is not a survivable injury.
Did
Call 800-299-9040. That's 800-299-9040. Call now.
On any given day, in emergency rooms around the country, as life or death decisions are made, hopes and hearts are saved and broken forever. This story is not a recreation. It's a look inside the trauma unit of Sharp Memorial Hospital in San Diego, California.
January 26, 1992. A young man injured in a motorcycle accident is brought in by Life Flight.
On three, Patty. On two, three. Out. Three.
Roxanne's got 3 minutes easy.
This is Britt Evans. She's 25 years old. Full coverage motorcycle, motocross in the South Sea area of Teal Wells. He rounded express the hill, fell, got tangled up. You say he wasn't responsive when you were. He would not do. He would not call him in.
Dr. Michael McHugh leads the trauma team treating 25-year-old Britt Evans.
When Britt arrived, he had a bad brain injury as well as a collapsed lung, and that is a bad combination because as his oxygen level in his blood diminished, his brain injury would have become worse.
Do we have something I can just wrap this arm with? Any kind of curve?
It's very difficult to say how head injuries are going to go because the initial impact to the brain does not necessarily say how things are going to go in 2 to 3 days.
What we call petechial hemorrhage, just little pinpoints of hemorrhage. Not anything surgically that can be done with fixing, but it just means that he's had a significant brain injury on that right side of his brain.
Although Britt is in a deep coma, his parents, Georgine and Bob Evans, are allowed in to see him.
Hi, Britt. Mom and Dad's here. Everyone sends their love. A lot of crazy things done for you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
My thoughts that went through my mind when I saw Britt in ICU was, God, how could this happen?
You're in good hands, Britt.
I felt that we were going to lose him. I felt that I just wanted to take him and shake him and make him wake up and make him know that we're there for him.
I guess the main concern is just not knowing really what's going on, what's happening. It's a terrible feeling. There's nothing you can do about it.
Urologist Jeff Siegel takes over Britt's care.
Britt, I want you to open your eyes. Open your eyes for me. An intracranial pressure monitor gives us a number, and the number lets us know what is normal and abnormal pressure. You and I walk around with a pressure under 10. A person with a brain injury will often have a number greater than 20. When I walk into his room and see a number greater than 20, I'm concerned, and we need to do whatever we can to get that pressure down. He was 30 feet in the air, thrown down, hit head first. So the first thing that goes through my mind is that that is not a survivable injury, and I'm concerned that Britt is teetering on the edge, and if we don't get a handle on the pressure, he may not have a good outcome.
Hi, Britt.
How you doing? It's Thursday. I've been in here 5 days. It's about time you wake up and start talking to me. I don't know if you can hear me or not, Britt. Your brothers are all worrying about you. Friends have been calling.
I've been telling Britt that we love him, that everybody's been calling, that we're behind him just to get well and to come back to us.
Dad's here.
Hey, Britt, you hear me? Huh? He's just laying there, he looks like he's dead, other than the machine pumping. And when you walk into the room, I don't care how much you like to look at him, the first thing you look at is the meter, and you stand there and stare at the meter. And you're sitting there saying, go down, meter, go down, you're not supposed to be up that high.
A lot of prayers are out there for you.
I feel like I just want to explode. I'd like him to open up his eyes and say, Mom, it's going to be okay, I'm going to be okay. When that happens, then I probably just totally break down and let it all loose. Cry and cry and cry. As long as he's alive, I'll take care of him the rest of my life, if I have to.
After 17 days, Britt finally came out of the coma
and began a grueling program of therapy and rehabilitation.
Most of the people that come to my attention are not wearing helmets, and their outcome is usually very poor. I think Britt is lucky in that he was wearing a helmet. There's no question in my mind that without a helmet, he had a non-survivable injury.
I think I was the happiest mother in the world when I saw him open up his eyes, because I knew at that point he was going to make it. And talk about a miracle. Britt had a miracle. He had God on his side and the guardian angels. When you get on a powerful bike like that, you know, I felt that he was bound to get hurt, but never anything this serious.
It's important for people to wear safety gear. You might not be able to walk away like I did. I just got lucky. Some people might not get that second chance.
Since his accident, he's more happy-go-lucky. He today is probably at about 70% of his self. But if it wasn't for the trauma team, Brett wouldn't be alive today. We just, you know, how do you thank somebody that does something like that for you? It's hard to do.
Meow.
In main menu, home button 1 of 9. In main menu, 109 channels.
for more full rescue 911 videos, National Day videos, sports streams, hit the big red button and subscribe. Peace out, YouTube. I mean, it's like almost 4:30 in the morning. It's real late. I'm going to go to bed now. And I'm going to click on finish event to end this live stream.